Hey, this is Bronze and Modern Gods. I'm John, and as always, it's this guy, Richard.
Hey, John. How you doing?
I am doing great. We are here as your election-free escape from everything that's going on in the world. We're going to spend some time talking about comic books, funny books, fun times today. And we've got a really cool main topic today. We're going to talk about the early days of comic book stores with one of the first guys in the nation to ever open his own comic book shop, Bill Joppick, and we're going to talk to him a little later. We've got our 25-year rule, of one that's close to Richard's heart, and our underrated books of the week. But let's start off with our hot book of the week. Richard, what is it?
Daredevil #1.
What?
Yeah, it's amazing the heat that's behind this book right now. Let me put it this way. I think the book has been undervalued for quite some time. Of all the keys that come from the Silver Age, Daredevil has always seemed to be lacking the love when it comes to the speculation game. So the value has been suppressed all these years, and then all of a sudden we're seeing some tremendous gains on the value of this book.
Yeah, we're seeing it nearly double. GPA for a 9.0 has grown from $9,652 in 2018, just 2 short years ago. I know it seems like an eternity, but now that same book selling for $18,000 this year. So if you had a 9.0 2 years ago, you doubled your money.
Not only that, we're seeing low-grade books having an incredible increase in value. I was at a show this past weekend, and we saw a 4.0 book that the seller wanted $2,700 for. It was raw, $2,700 for the raw book, and he said that price was fixed. A graded GPA 4.0 right now is going for about $1,922. So it's huge jump in price in a relatively short period of time.
That's crazy. Now, did anybody buy it, or did it stay up there the whole show?
It stayed there.
Yeah.
So, people can ask whatever they want for a book. Doesn't mean people are actually going to pay it. But if he felt firm on that price, he must have seen that there was external forces raising the price above what GPA was asking. And like we've had conversations before, GPA does not cover private sales and sales outside of its normal range of venues that it covers. So if there's a tremendous amount of sales outside of those venues, GPA doesn't normally reflect that. Yeah,
we're seeing some hefty prices on Instagram live sales, and some people are biting. So there's no doubt that this book is on fire right now, which is only appropriate for a devil to be on fire. Dad jokes? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bad joke. Yeah, it's definitely. I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see DD get the love that it needs. It was one of, like I said, one of the last of the Silver Age major keys, I think, to really start to catch fire.
Same month as Avengers #1.
It makes me wonder, is Iron Man #1? I know Iron Man #1 is not Iron Man's first appearance, but it is his solo series. I wonder if it's going to be the next one that starts to see increase in value.
It has, at least from the last 10 years, for sure. So we'll see. I know that, in a different case here, there are plentiful copies of Iron Man 1 in higher grade than there are Daredevil #1. But maybe it's his time, maybe Namor will finally get some love somewhere in the MCU, and we'll see Submariner catch fire. But
or Dr. Doom.
Dr. Doom, for sure. I don't know what you have invested in him at all, if any, but it'd be nice to see that happen. So, hey, I forgot to mention, if you're not following us on Facebook and Instagram, check us out at Bronze and Modern Gods. Visit us online at bronzeandmoderngods.com. And if you're watching us on YouTube, we implore you to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It helps us every little bit, and we really appreciate you and all the new subscribers that have come on the last couple of weeks. It's amazing. All right, moving on to our main topic this week. It's one that is near and dear to my heart. I kind of got inspired with last week's episode when we talked about the birth of the direct market, and it is a conversation that we had with a man named Bill Joppick. Bill was from the same area that Richard and I grew up in, and he had the first comic book store in my hometown of Elyria, Ohio. Now, I tracked him down in a really weird way. I was
not a stalker way at all.
Not stalkery at all. Not involving Google and keywords like Mr. Fantasies, which was the name of the shop, and Elyria, Ohio. And I got a hit one day on my Google alert, and someone had on eBay an actual bag stuffer, a flyer from Mr. Fantasies.
That's
from
amazing.
1977. Yeah, and it's amazing that this thing survived. Someone saved this. Whenever you bought a book, they would stuff this in the bag. It was a different one each week, a different little comic strip. Really well done, really well drawn and written. And it had his name at the top, Bill Joppick. And I thought, all right, I'm going to go on Facebook and see what I get. And I found a Bill Joppick in Ohio, and I just randomly sent him a Facebook message. And sure enough, it was him. And he's was excited enough to join us today. Now, we do have to note the conversation was cut off for the first 2 minutes due to some unforeseen audio issues. Hey, technology is what it is. So we're picking it up right after we introduce ourselves and we talk about the flyer that I found on eBay and why he did these flyers and how this flyer that he was handing out also at comic book conventions got him a phone call out of the blue one day from no one other than Stan Lee.
I mean, we talked for like a half hour on his dime. I didn't care. And
this was like circa 76, right?
Even earlier than that. It was probably 72, 73. No, it had to be 76, right? Because I opened in 75.
So he was probably doing some research on these stores and what they could do, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was, at that time, there was no such thing as direct marketing. There was no marketing. There was two guys where I bought comics from, Vlad Surinsky in Cleveland, and there was a guy out of Michigan. He was pretty dependable. His name was Jim Friel, and he was out of Grand Rapids. He would ship my comics out on Tuesday. I would get them by Thursday, which beat the stores by one day. And so I had the first comics in town.
You had a competitive advantage for sure. It's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Were these actual newsstand distributors you were buying from, or people that were
No, Friel was an actual, he would set up at the shows. He was an actual wholesaler. Because at that time, I checked into Marvel, and they had ungodly numbers you had to buy from Marvel. And I didn't have I wasn't doing that kind of business.
Yeah, they didn't set up their direct sales program until the middle of 1979, and we covered that last week on the podcast. So let's take a step back and tell me about when you opened the store and what motivated you to open the store.
Oh, that had always been my dream. I used to go to flea markets and garage sales, and back then you could buy a good amount of comics for little or nothing, and I would just stockpile them. And so when the time come to open the store, I had everything right there. And that was my dream from right from the get-go, to open a store. I wanted to open a comic store.
And this was 1975. When did you officially open the doors?
75. I think it was April 75.
And was this in downtown Elyria?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
On Broad Street, for those of you
right.
who...
It's part of Rite Aid now, but there used to be a little store, and it had 3 different levels to it. And I got the front level, and the guy with the antiques got the back level, and he never showed up. I come to find out later that he never was in on a deal, and I was just kind of the only one selling it or paying any kind of rent. So
I'm laughing.
That was doomed to...
I'm laughing because, Richard, you see the parallels 20 years later when I opened my store on Broad Street and shared it with a dealer, an antiques dealer who was never there.
Really?
Yes. So that's crazy. So you open in 75. You're getting your books from your two guys, one guy in Grand Rapids.
was there any competition? Was Kovacs Comics in Cleveland like the only guy in town at that point?
Oh, he wasn't in Cleveland then. He was in Canton. That was like an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there was, I mean, it was a long distance call just to call him, let alone, you know, have competition from him.
Oh, long distance. That takes me back.
Something happened that.
Yeah, caring about people being long distance.
There was a store in Cleveland that was kind of my competition. He was the next, and it wasn't Kovacs, but all of a sudden he quit, and everybody come to my store. All of a sudden, I'm selling huge numbers.
Yeah.
And I had to, you know, re-up my quantities because all of it, I can't remember whose store died out, but somebody closed their store, and I was the one.
Now,
I went to one of the earliest comic book conventions in Cleveland. A kid named Scott, and I can't think of his last name. Young kid, he was in his teens, and I think there was like 12 dealers in the whole place.
wow.
And at the time, I made like $140, and I was making like $125 working in the factory for a week, and I made $140 in one day. That amazed me.
You're done.
Nothing now.
But still, leave the factory and go sell funny books.
Yeah. Oh, I did. I quit. The day I quit, it was so funny because I sold all my tools. I threw away my clothes, my factory clothes, and I walked out of there. And I had to go. There was a guy named Lynn Sheldon who used to be Barnaby.
Barnaby.
Oh, yeah.
Children's television host in Cleveland.
He had his own like afternoon show, and he had me on, and I had borrowed some expensive comics and showed him to, and he had me on the show, and that was the day I quit the factory.
Wow.
So
now I have to ask,
to throw your clothes away and sell your tools. You're doing it.
That's right. I ain't going back.
I have to ask, God rest his soul, Lynn Sheldon, was he drunk when you were on?
No, he actually was sober.
Okay, just checking. He was notoriously drunk when he was on live. If you remember all those stories. So
Yep.
you've got your shop. Elyria's a small town, kind of conservative. I remember there was like one head shop, Birdie's, in Elyria.
Yep.
What was
Still there.
Yeah, what was the reaction though when you opened? Because I remember just growing up in a Southern Baptist household, my mom hesitated to take me to Mr. Fantasies. What is that place? It's dark. It's scary. What's going on in there?
Nobody really gave. They would always look at me funny.
Yeah.
When I'd say I run a comic book store, because nobody heard of that before. Why would anybody want to buy a comic?
Right.
And then you have to go through, well, this comic's selling for this much. And after a while, I didn't say a word.
You just let it go. So
Yeah.
I wore this shirt on purpose because your store started the same year Howard the Duck #1 came out. And as everybody knows their comic book history, notoriously low distribution. And I'm using air quotes here because some people were being accused of retailers holding back bundles in order to generate this false demand.
I was one of them.
Oh, so let's hear the real story. What happened? What went down?
Kovacs, I wasn't going to do it. Kovacs gave me the idea. He says, he says, we could buy up most of the comics for this area, and we'd have an open market. So we started, I had 600 Howard the Ducks, and that was pretty much northern Ohio.
Oh, wow.
So it's true that this book was hoarded by retailers and speculators. Now nobody would give a crap. The speculation is part of the comic book collecting market. But back then it was a big scandal, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. There's an interesting story. Right the fall after Howard the Duck 1 come out, they were bringing about $3 to $5 a piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I put on one of my 2 comic conventions at Midway Mall, and Kovacs was there, and he forgot to tell the girl what he wanted to do was start them out at $3 a piece. They had no bags, no prices on them. She was selling them for $0.25.
Oh, no.
No.
The retail price.
No.
Oh, she's undercutting you.
He didn't find out till halfway through the show.
So people got some deals. I remember those.
And he didn't get mad at her because it was his fault. He never, you get so immersed in the world, you figure, everybody knows.
Oh,
But she didn't. She was a girl off the streets.
That's so funny. Well, before Richard joined us here, I think he missed the part where you were talking about the Fiction House collection you ran into and what was in it. Can you tell us about that again?
That was such a sweet deal. I couldn't have. I was driving home. I almost got into an accident a couple of times because I'm looking through the box of all the comics. But the guy was a commercial artist. He never read a comic. He would put them on his easel and use the girls. He would draw lingerie ads and women-type clothing ads for the newspaper. He would hand draw them. But he needed a model, so he would buy Fiction House comics, or there was a run of Phantom Ladies, Zoot, Rula.
Zoot, yeah.
Yeah, 250 comics, $250. And there was runs from 1 on up, and they were all near mint to mint.
Wow.
So when you had the store, what were your big books? What were your wall books?
I didn't keep a lot of them on display. I kept most of the better Marvels. That was it. I mean, I had Mickey Mouse #1, Phantom Blot. I had a few halfway decent books, but everybody they'd ooh and ah and drool, but they'd never buy them. So after a while, I just put like Conan 1s and Daredevil 1s and stuff like that because that's what they were buying.
Any amazing fantasy 15s ever passed through your hands at the shop?
Yeah, a few of them. That's what gets me today is the price of them. I probably had a half a dozen of them.
I'm not surprised to hear you say that because my friend Scott Dillon that I grew up with in this tiny town, he had an Amazing Fantasy 15 in his drawer.
Yeah.
In his drawer?
He kept all his Spider-Man. He had almost a full run of Spider-Man comics, and he kept them in a dresser drawer, flat. And I remember that specifically. He and I would ride our bikes down to Mr. Fantasy.
When I first started out, there was no such thing as a comic book box. You guys got it easy.
Yes.
We had to make our own boxes. Try and find. Kovacs found a great deal. If he bought the 2-liter boxes from Canada Dry or Pepsi or something, you could fit 2 rows of comics in there. And that's what he used. And he was the one that come up with the idea for the box. He didn't patent it. I told him, I said, you got to patent this. And he says, nah, I ain't got to patent it.
I love the fact that they were Canada Dry boxes. That is the most Northeastern Ohio story I've heard today. So the store is going okay, but you closed down after just a couple of years. What prompted that?
I got bored.
Yeah. So
the problem with comic book stores is you see the same people every day. I mean, they got a routine, and they're in there every day. And if I used to go out on the road and do a show, sales would suffer because they wanted to see me there. Mm-hmm. And I just, after a while, I started doing antique shows in malls. Yeah. And I just said, the hell with it, I'm done.
So did you sell the store to someone else, or did you just close it down?
I just sold the inventory. I had a big auction, sold everything out, and that was it.
I was at that auction, and I won a box of just random stuff. There was like a Marvel Blacklight poster in there. There was a copy of Eerie #2 from the 50s.
Marvel Blacklight? Wow. You know what those things go for today?
I know, and I didn't save it. I actually hung it on my wall in my room instead of saving it. It was important to me.
Wow.
It was at night.
About
I remember at night.
20 years ago, a friend of mine, we were doing an antique show in Topeka, Kansas, and he went over to buy some pulps off a guy, and the guy had every Marvel Blacklight still sealed in the plastic tubes. And he got them for like $1 a piece, and he comes over and he says, "These worth anything?" I said, "Jesus, these are like the Holy Grail, man." At the time, they were bringing $300-400 a piece. And he put them all on eBay, and he got $300-400 a piece for them.
So you auction off your inventory. Did you keep anything for yourself? Do you still have anything?
I kept like 10 boxes for show stock. I was really tired and bored with it at the time. Mm-hmm. And at one point, and I wish I'd have done it now, I almost had bought a franchise from Heroes World.
Oh,
remember
wow.
Heroes World?
They used to put out that cool catalog that looked like a comic book and all the merchandise.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Had I went into Heroes World, with the toy boom, what it is, God, I mean, I never even knew what Mego was until, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, you would have. They would have helped you get a franchise store in the Midway Mall there.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah.
Yep.
I thought long and hard about it, but once again, I'd had to be there all the time. That was the thing. I wanted freedom. I'm 28 years old. I don't want to, tie myself down to a comic book store.
I hear you. Do you have anything left over in your personal collection now, or is it long gone?
Not a thing.
Wow.
Not a thing. I've found some stuff out over the years at the flea market. Mm-hmm. There's too many hustlers out there now for me to find anything good.
Yeah, there's one right here.
Believe it or not, I'm into Legos now.
Legos?
Oh, really? Okay.
I like Legos. They're really cool. And I came into that by accident. I went to an estate sale, and the guy had 3 50-gallon tubs full of Legos. One was full of manuals and boxes. One was full of partial sets, and one was full of parts. And I said, what do you take for all 3? And he said, $50, and I grabbed them and went home.
There you go.
And from then on, I never looked back.
Excellent. So it sounds like you still kind of dip your toe in it, though, because you're aware of how much Amazing Fantasy 15's worth now. Do you do any kind of reading up on what's going on with the hobby these days?
If it comes up, like if I'm glancing through something online or Facebook or something like that, I still look, but it's gotten to the point where, man, the stuff I used to sell for $200 and $300 is now $200,000 and $300,000.
Yes.
I mean, I bought a collection one time off a guy. Right on the top was Fantastic Four #1, and it was beautiful. And he says, "Are these worth anything?" And I said, "What do you want for them?" He says, "Would you give me $50?"
Sure.
Sure, yeah. First 4 Fantastic Four, the first 5 Spider-Man. Unbelievable.
No, it's a fantastic story, and it's especially the fact that there were only 11 different comic book stores in the entire state. Did you have any kind of communication with anybody other than Kovacs, or the other stores?
Yeah, I knew a lot of. There was Queen City down in Cincinnati. He was the biggest, and he had a chance to really make some serious money, and he didn't capitalize on it. Kenner was right down the street from where his store was. And all the employees, that was right around the time of Star Wars, they would come in and trade him Star Wars figures for comics.
Oh.
He could have had the Boba Fett, the $25,000 Boba Fett. He says, they sent him to a dump, but they wouldn't give him the location.
Oh, man. Time to call an archaeologist. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because you were open. Your store was open in the heat of all the original Star Wars mania. We're going to bring up one of the ads you used to run in the local newspaper, where you would actually advertise you had Star Wars memorabilia for sale. What do you remember about Star Wars #1 selling?
It sold good. I mean, it was never a high dollar item. And then after a while, they had all the reprint books. And I used to take those antique shows. And when everybody else was getting 50 cents, I was getting at least $1 for them. Yeah. And, I did pretty good. And there was a company down in Florida, Intergalactic Trading Post. And they used to have all kinds of pins, buttons, badges, that kind of stuff. And I would buy that. I would go to antique shows, and there would be a mob around me.
Wow. Trying
to buy all those, because nobody had ever seen them before. And that's when I was out doing antique shows. That's where I used to find a lot of my better deals. So,
well, okay, so I'm really going to dig into your memory here, and if you don't know anything about this, that's fine. But we love going down little rabbit holes on this show.
Sure.
Yes, we do.
You had a shop when Marvel ran an experiment of trying to price certain books for 35 cents, and they only ran it in a few cities. Cleveland, Northeast Ohio was not one of the cities, but did you ever hear of or come across any of these 35-cent variants when they were running that test?
Probably not. Because everything I bought was from in my own area.
Yeah.
And very seldom would I get a buy on the road from a comic convention, because by the time they got down to me, all the good stuff was gone. So, but no, I don't think I ever got any of the 30. Now I guess that's a big deal.
It is.
Yeah.
They only ran the test in, I think, 8 cities nationwide, and people didn't even know about these variants until about 10, 15 years later, when they started discovering them. Going, wow, these are. And Star Wars #1 is one of those that has a 35-cent variant that goes for 10.
I believe I saw something about that in one of the price guides.
Yeah.
About the 35-cent one, and at the time, it didn't even faze me because we never got them.
What were your?
Toledo was the closest city that actually was a part of that test.
Yes.
Some of them may have bled out to the neighboring cities just through, normal trade and things like that. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think Cosmic Comics in Cleveland came after you. That was Tony Isabella's shop.
Right. There was one in the arcade. Mark Stubbe ran it.
Yeah, that lasted a long time too. That one in the arcade.
What
was the name?
He helped me find. I had some books stolen, and he helped me find them. He helped me get them.
Well,
the girl who was working for me had some of her friends come in, and they stole these comics. So I immediately called him. I says, "Mark, be on the lookout for these books." And sure enough, they brought him into his store. So he grabs the books, put them under his counter. He says, "What books?"
That's how you handled stuff in the 70s, folks.
Sure. Call a cop. Go ahead, call a cop.
Right, exactly. So, what were your big sellers when you had the shop? What moved product?
It was mainly the Marvel line.
Yeah.
Marvel out. So I was selling 2-to-1 Marvel versus DC, and even when DC would come out with a new book, it didn't do nothing compared to what Marvel did. I remember when Spectacular Spider-Man came out.
That was a big one.
We tried to clean out the stores then, but by that time it had gotten too big. You buy 600 issues, and oh yeah, we got another 1,000. And after a while, it just becomes ridiculous,
So 75 was right around Giant Size X-Men #1. Did you stock a lot of those back then?
Nobody knew anything about it. I used to have a guy come into my store. He was on disability from Ford, walked with a cane, and he got a damn good settlement. This guy, starting around, I asked him one time, starting around the time of Conan #1, buy 10 #1s and 5 of everything else. He had so many, and he would put them on boards and put them in a box and forget about them, never look at them again. He had so many comics in his comic book room, the house on that corner started sinking into the ground.
And what was the address?
yeah. We'll go visit him.
Yeah, he's probably dead by now.
Even better.
Because he was older than me. But he had to have millions of dollars worth of comics.
Wow.
I mean, there was just no way around it.
You have to wonder what happens to this stuff, if families knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been delightful. It's really great meeting you. And the stories about Elyria and the comic books back then, that brings back a lot of memories.
Talking about theft, it made me think. I never had a lot of theft. I had my occasional shoplifters. Let me tell you 2 stories if you're going to close this thing up.
Yeah.
First story, one day I'm sitting there at home. The store is closed. I'm doing antique shows now. I get a letter with no return address on it. In it are 2 crisp $100 bills and a letter from a customer who said, "I used to steal comics from your store, and I had a change of heart, and I figure what I stole is worth $200, so here you are."
Wow.
Never signed his name or nothing.
Wow.
You believe that?
Hey,
somebody getting it off his chest.
Somebody's doing the 12, they're doing the 12 steps.
I think that's what he was doing. I think that what it was what it was. The other one, I had bought a nice collection, nice run of Marvels, and I had them in comic boxes, and it was during the summer, and I had them back in a corner as I was working on them, and I didn't think about it. The window was open, but I wouldn't I wouldn't have thought about stealing. Well, these kids, all of a sudden I go to look through the boxes looking for this, that, and the other thing, and it's gone. And I know I didn't sell them. And so one of the kids come in, and I could pretty well trust him. I says, what's the deal? Where's my comics? And he says, well, so-and-so and so on. Named off a bunch of kids. I said, do you know who they are? He says, yeah. I said, do you know where they live? Yep. So we went out that day, and little by little, I regained all my comics.
Thanks to that snitch.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Bill, this has been a delight. We are so thankful that you took the time to join us, and we want to thank you for that. But I also want to thank you for inspiring my love of this hobby so many years ago, and I'm still in it, and I just appreciate you so much.
All righty, I appreciate that.
That was fun. I meant what I said, you know, it kind of was touching for me to connect with this guy who was so formative in my youth. And we thank you so much, Bill, for joining us today.
Yeah, it was excellent talking to him, reliving those memories, kind of put you back in the mindset of, you know, back in the past.
Yeah, and I have such weird key memories that have been burned in my mind about those days and actual books that I bought and the day that I bought them. But I can't remember, you know, when I paid my electric bill last week. I'm not quite sure how the mind works, but there it is. And, you know, going back through those misty curtains of time, we draw it back to 1995, which takes us to our favorite segment, the 25-year rule. Richard, this is about you this week, the 25-year rule. What are you talking about from 1992?
Yeah. Normally John does this segment, but I had an idea for this segment for this week, and that is a book called Gen 13. Yeah, Gen 13 was a book from the early days of Image Comics. The Wildstorm imprint is what it was a part of. And it was Jim Lee and Brandon Choi and a certain J. Scott Campbell as the three originators of this book. The book is, if you haven't read the series, it's about a bunch of teenagers who are part of this experiment, and they end up getting superpowers, and they escape from this government agency that's trying to exploit them, and they have adventures. You know, as it's a very similar storyline for the most part as X-Men. So you get these teenagers and you go through their different adventures. The first 20 issues were actually drawn by J. Scott Campbell himself, not just the cover, but he actually drew the first 20 issues, and that's how we got to start. So if you're interested in seeing how JSC does a panel, which is pretty fascinating, it's a good way of seeing that. He left about issue 20, turning the reins over because he started another title of his called Danger Girl, which is another female-centric book. Let's just say the characters in these books, the female characters at least, are quite well proportioned.
Idealized?
Idealized is a good way of putting it. Yes, but that's JSC's trademark. His characters, for the most part, are idealized. But there's definitely a sexual aspect to the appearance of the characters. And this book over the series, it ran through a number of different series. They ended up in one at the end of, I believe it was the second series, blowing up the entire team with a 6 megaton atomic weapon. But in true comic book fashion, they managed to time travel and be able to come back through a convoluted process that can only happen in comic books. And so the original team came back. Wildstorm, which became Worldstorm, eventually folded and became a part of the DC universe. So those characters are now melded into the universe, and potentially we could see some of those characters in future movies, TV shows, comic books. But it's an interesting story. If you want to see Jim Lee and in a place where he has no reins, or you want to see J. Scott Campbell actually draw books, it's a great way of getting into that. None of these books are very expensive at this point.
Yeah, they were hot for a while when they first came out. I remember that. Do you remember what the first appearance of Gen 13 was? I'm going by memory here, but I'm pretty sure I'm correct.
No. What was it?
Deathmate.
Oh, man. I can remember Deathmate. Yeah.
I think that's the actual first appearance of the team. They make a cameo, or there's a backup story or something in Deathmate that introduces them, and then they spun off into their own title.
Yeah, they had a couple spin-offs themselves of different books. But for the most part, they never really generated a huge audience. And Image kept trying with them and came up with a number of series, a number of reboots, a number of attempts to make it work. And ultimately it did not. But it's a great way of, like I said, seeing that those artists work, and it's still a good story.
You like J. Scott Campbell? You like good girl art? Here you are. I mean, this is all about the 90s, that bad girl era, with Lady Death and Wonder Woman and bike shorts. I mean, this is right in there.
Yeah, it's right into that genre.
All right, so you've got some hunting to do in those back issue bins. A couple more things we're going to ask you to go hunt for are in our underrated books of the week. Mine is, you're all going to roll your eyes. John, here you go again. Incredible Hercules, number 133.
Wow, a Herc book. Wow.
Not because of Herc.
Amazing.
But it is the origin of little Mr. Amadeus Cho, Mastermind Excello, as he was first called in Amazing Fantasy 15. But then he became Herc's sidekick for quite a run, about almost a 2-3 year run there in the Incredible Hercules. And issue 133 is his origin. And it has two different covers. There is an A cover that features Amadeus front and center. There's also a really cool B cover that features Hercules, and almost kind of a riff of that Marvel 25th anniversary border cover with Hercules in the middle. Instead of a headshot, though, you get the full bod. So, hey. Incredible Hercules 133 is still really affordable raw. It's starting to pick up a little bit on eBay, but you can still grab a nice raw copy from anywhere from $5 to $10. But we did see a sale of a 9.8 CGC slab version of 133 cover A go for $125 last month. So Amadeus Cho, Braun, whatever he's going by these days, Totally Awesome Hulk, he's part of the champions now. And so there is some spec happening here. If you can't afford an Amazing Fantasy 15, either one of them, you might want to try to grab an Incredible Hercules 133. What do you have this week for your underrated book?
I've got a weird one here. This is a turtle pick. But not the kind of turtle pick that you would normally see. It's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Street Collectors Edition from 1988.
What?
Yeah, back in the late 80s, the Playmates toys collection had if you bought some of the Playmate toys, the Turtle Playmates, there was a coupon you could cut out and be able to send in for a Turtle Force fan club kit. You could become a member of the Turtles fan club. So you had to mail that in, and what you got out of the kit was a sticker, a membership card, a certificate of authenticity, a bandana, and a comic book, a mini comic book. We would probably call it an ash can now. I think it's
okay.
But this little comic book is pretty cool. The only way you could get it was by being a member of this club, and being a member of the club and also taking care of it now for the past 30 years. It is quite a treat. But it's an interesting story. It features some early Turtles villains in the Flaming Dragons. It's not a great read necessarily, but it is a historic read, I think. It really focuses on that early excitement that the Turtles generated, and the young kids buying into that excitement and actually going through the process of joining the fan club. He also got him a subscription to a 12-month newsletter, which I would love to be able to read. If anybody out there has any of those newsletters that'd be willing to share them with us, we'll be happy to post them. Because I think it's a great piece of turtle history.
There's his Instagram handle if you need it. So I'm assuming you have one of these fan club kits.
I have several. Now, I have a couple of the books. Then they're going for about $50 now on eBay. But I also found just recently an entire kit with all the bandanas and the stickers and everything. I don't have that in hand yet, but yeah, I've been buying these as I see them, because they, like I said, the book itself goes for around $50. If you get a pristine copy, it would go for more. I'm just wondering, you know, as a speculator, for $50, it's an investment. If all of a sudden people turn looking for that next rare turtle thing, there can't be a huge number of these things out there, especially in high grade.
I don't know if people know about it. I mean, this is the first I've heard of it. And has anybody ever actually slabbed one and tried to sell it? Do you know?
As a matter of fact, yes, there are slab versions of it out there.
Wow. Okay. That's a good one. I'm with you. I don't think a lot of people know about that. So good thing you grabbed yours before you talked about it. You greedy bastard, you.
That's, you know me. I like to put my money where my mouth is.
Right. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week. As always, if you're not following us on Facebook and Instagram, please do at Bronze and Modern Gods. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit like, hit subscribe. Please help us out. If you were listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, leave us a review. And we're going to hit viewer mail for sure next week. We got some fun happening in the next couple of weeks. Make sure you stick around, and we will see you next time.
Everyone stay safe.